So in today's video, we're going to be talking about lenses, specifically the DZO-Film Vespid Prime versus the 50mm f1.2 by Sony. Today we're going to find out if G Masters have gotten so good that they actually start to rival and beat cinema glasses.
Ready?
Let's find out. Alright, so let's get some of the obvious things out of the way. Clearly they look drastically different from each other. The build quality on the DZO Vespid Primes is made out of a metal housing, whereas the Sony G Master lens has a more combination of plastics and metals, but I will say if I had to pick between the two of them, I would go for the DZO Vespid Prime. That metal housing is really reassuring that this is built to last, even if I unfortunately drop it. Which I hope I don't, because it's a rental. Now if we're going to talk about lens features, the DZO Vespid Prime and the Sony G Master lens both have manual apertures. The difference is a 50mm G Master lens actually has a clickable switch where you can click or declick on the aperture as you move through the range. Both lenses also do feature manual focus, but on the Vespid Prime side of things, you actually have markers on your distance so you know how far you are when you're manual focusing. Now we did do a video on manual focusing previously in a video, and having markings on your lenses so you can judge the distance when you're dialing in your image can make things that much easier, especially when you're shooting in manual. Now what I will say is that there's a gigantic aperture difference between the two of these lenses. Where the Sony 50mm G Master uses an f1.2, the DZO Vespid Prime, the 50mm, uses a t2.1. Now if you're somebody that's new, the difference between t-stops and f-stops is essentially f-stops is more of an approximation of how much light is getting into your sensor, where t-stops is very exact and very consistent, making it easier when you're doing lens swaps. Now when you're using f-stops, it might say f1.2, but there might be some differences based on the lens copy that you have or even different lenses at the same aperture. T-stops are just a more accurate way of judging how much light is hitting your sensor, which makes things a little bit more consistent. You may also notice, and if you're a Sony user might be a little bit frustrated, but the DZO Vespid Prime actually doesn't come in the Sony E-mount. Now the one I'm using is a PL version with an adapter to an E-mount camera, so if you are somebody that's looking for a DZO Film Vespid Prime, just know that you're going to have to pick up an EF or PL mount and you're going to have to adapt it to your sensor. And lastly, we're going to talk about the golden elephant in the room, and that's going to be their price tag. Right now, the 50mm Vespid Prime is going to sit around $1,400 US. And the Sony 50mm G Master, the 1.2, is about $2,000, making it a $600 difference between the two lenses. Also, you might not know, but the DZO Vespid Prime actually is a manual lens only, so you're not going to have any autofocusing features on there. And the 50mm G Master lens not only has autofocus built in, but if you're somebody that has a camera with focus breathing compensation like the FX6, the FX30, or the A7 IV, you're also going to be able to use that exclusive feature. Alright, so even though I'm not at a desk with a bunch of camera gear behind me and RGB lights, you probably don't want to hear me talk about these two lenses. You want to see how they work in the field. So we're a couple days in the feature and I have tested out some footage on both of these lenses. Now I'm going to start off by saying I'm not a stranger to either the DZO Vespid Prime or the 50mm G Master lens. In fact, there are different pieces of work that I put up on this channel and different pieces of client work that I've made using either one of these two lenses. Now I want to say that both of these lenses have great image quality. They're both very high quality pieces of glass and they provide really good images for you and your videos. But what I am going to say is putting them side by side, they actually do look drastically different from each other. Now the Sony 50mm G Master lens unsurprisingly looks very neutral and very sharp and crisp. And it's supposed to. Generally speaking, it's a photography lens, it has autofocus, it has a lot of the characteristics of a G Master lens. Now on the flip side, the DZO Vespid Primes have a certain look to them, as a Sony G Master lens has a very sharp fall off and it is a very sharp and neutral lens. The transition between light and dark on somebody's face is very pronounced. Now on the DZO Vespid Primes, I do find that there's a little bit more of a smoothing between where you would find a lighting source to somebody's face on a key light down to where the shadows are the darker sides of that person's face. Now comparing a cinema lens to a photography lens is an apples and oranges conversation, and at the end of the day you want to know which one is going to be better for your camera. Now, what I will say, if you are somebody that's run and gun, you're a solo operator, you're doing a lot of client work, for all the specifications that it has and its compatibilities native to its system, the Sony 50mm G Master lens, albeit doesn't have a necessarily stylized look, is still going to be the place to go, especially for you guys that are solo filmmakers. But on the flip side, if you're looking for a particular look and a particular style of the lenses you want to keep in your kit, I still think the DZO Vespid Primes gives me the happy median in terms of the work that I do to give me a very aesthetic cinematic image. And on top of that, it does cost a little bit less. You do have to factor in getting an EF or PL adapter that's going to go into your Sony mount, which actually brings the price of getting something like a DZO Vespid Prime a little bit closer into the Sony G Master. But it doesn't have things like autofocus or focus breathing compensation, some of the things that are exclusive to some of the G Master lines of lenses. Now, I am working on a couple of short documentaries that I want to get out for my channel, a couple for contests, and just a couple for myself. And because I'm looking for a more stylized look in at least 2 of these projects, I'm actually going to switch over to the DZO Vespid Primes instead of my 50mm G Master. However, for my client work, the stuff that I do that pays my bills, I will use a G Master lens 99% of the time, as opposed to something like a cinema lens. Now, at the end of the day, comparing these 2 lenses is like writing. Now, you could print words out or you could write in cursive. You could read both that's on the page, but one of those 2 has a type of look that people gel with, but not everybody wants to read. All right, that's it for me. So let me know which team you are on. Are you on the more budget cinema glass side of things? Or are you in the higher end photography lens side of things? Leave your comment down below and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.